Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 151. My name is NBZ and I wonder if most people have even got through last episode, Bally, because it was a bit of a chunky...
Yeah, I mean, well done if you did. There wasn't too much fallout on the Discord server and in the comments, I think, from our list, so hopefully it wasn't overly controversial, but
no, people respect opinions on our side of the internet. Thankfully, we don't have too many people who are assholes. None are assholes. In fact, if you're listening to this, categorically, you're not an asshole. I'll say that with confidence.
Yeah.
I feel like people can get very riled up about lists generally, which is like... It's so stupid because lists are so fucking stupid anyway. Like, it's completely meaningless. And yet, for some reason, we as a human society just love ranking things and putting things in order. I love doing it personally. Like, I just think it's one of my favorite things in the world. But it also is completely meaningless and pointless. But, you know, it's great.
I think everyone likes it when others share their opinions on anything. And it's just lists are another way of doing that in a way. So that I can see why that can cause... It's kind of opinions distilled down, right? It's like when you go to a website and you just read a top 10 and you get mad because you don't actually read why. You just see the numbers and you see what's there, and it's like, the problem with like reviews and people scrolling down to scores and getting angry without even reading the text. It's just hey. I remember there were a couple of comments when I did my top 10 games last year, and they said, I disagree with your order, but you actually justified it well with like what you said about it. I was like, oh, thanks. So like they understand sort of where I'm coming from with my random list.
I mean, like I don't even know why Red Dead Redemption 2 made your list, but you know, that's
it's a good game. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it's good. Good story.
Great. You're Bally. Hi Bally, how you doing?
I'm good. We're getting ready to cross the Atlantic and do all sorts, and I've got a hankering for one thing in particular when we're in the States, and that is buffalo wings with blue cheese dip.
Jesus. See, like the cheese part of that makes me want to run far away in the other direction as possible.
Oh, they taste great without even dipping it. It's just that like you dip them because the wings themselves are really hot, and then you like dip them in the blue cheese and it like cools them down a bit. So you know. But anyway, that's what I've got a hankering for. Have you got any like specific US foods that you're just dying to like?
Well, I mean, for years I've wanted to have like Portillo's hot dogs in Chicago, but we're not going to Chicago. So like Greg Miller has non-stop talk about them since I've been following him on the internet. And
we're in the Baltimore DC area, so definitely like tell us what chains
hit us up on Twitter
for.
if there's any good food suggestions you got. We should mention we're going to America because our friend who we mention on the podcast all the time, Ali T, is getting married. So we're going to his wedding, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll talk about it maybe at the end of the show about what our plans are for recording and stuff like that. But it's going to be maybe a little bit different next episode. But just framing that up for people. Cool. So we've got some stuff to talk about. We've got some video games, some news, some stuff like that. Bally, do you want to tell people what we're going to be chatting about today?
Yes, first segment is going to be what we have been playing. Second segment, we've got a couple of your emails, and then third segment, we're going to do a little bit of a news roundup. There's just a few bits and bobs that I think is worth covering.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of little bits coming out here and there. It feels like we're in September now. It's around the time when Nintendo usually drops a Direct somewhere. I have a feeling we're going to be like in the US and they're dropping a Direct and we're going to be like, we need some internet to watch this somehow. So that'll be an interesting thing. But I do think that that's probably inevitable. Like we're rolling into like, Astral Chain's just come out. We got Link's Awakening, Luigi coming up. It's Switch Lite is launching, right?
Yeah.
So there's lots of things for them to be promoting and talking about, and there's probably some things that they can set up for like December and maybe the start of next year. So exciting times as per the usual with Nintendo. But let's kick things off with video games. We're still playing video games. They exist. Bally, I know you are... you're still in the Fire Emblem hole.
I am.
Kind of slowly making your way. I think you have plans to make that your priority over the kind of break in America.
Yeah, so while I'm playing like a longer game that I know is going to take multiple shows to cover, I always try to play something short in between. So this time I played Uncharted 3.
Which I don't know if I could define that as short necessarily. Like, it's a 10-hour experience.
Well, it was 9 hours on how long to beat. So I thought sub 10 hours I would call a short game. Although it definitely obviously took me longer than 9 hours because that's me.
Bally's time machine.
Yeah, it probably took me about just like, I don't know, 10, 11, 12. I don't know.
See, I remember Uncharted 3 actually being quite a bit longer than the others. I think 2 was the one that took me the shortest amount of time. But yeah, so 2 was about 9 hours for me. I think 3 was maybe 12 or so.
Yeah, they all feel about the same length for me personally.
When you get to 4, that's when it beefs up. 4's like 16 hours. It's like a heavy. Right, it's much heavier duty.
And I know that like The Last of Us is 16, 18 hours. So
yeah,
like,
so Uncharted 4 and Last of Us are both around the same length, and then Lost Legacy is back to like my preferable thing, which is like the kind of lean 8 to 9 hour experience. Which that's kind of why I think Uncharted 2 and Lost Legacy are my favorite. Not only because like set pieces and everything and just all that stuff, but they're tighter experiences. They're just like really, like, I remember the summer afternoon I spent playing the majority of Lost Legacy. It was a joy. It was just like so many different locations, environments, all this stuff happened. That's my favorite thing about Uncharted. It's like the globe-trotting nature of it, which like the first game didn't really do that. The first game you're like in a jungle, and then from 2 and 3 onwards, it's just like, hey, we're globe-trotting. We're going so many different various places. It's great, and I think 3 has that in abundance as well.
So based on like what others have said, including you, on like the other games, I was prepared that 3 would be somewhere between 1 and 2, with 2 being great and 1 being not as great, but still I really enjoyed that game.
Solid.
As well.
It's solid. Yeah,
so 3 was actually far closer to 2 than I actually thought it was going to be going in. I actually really enjoyed it by the end, and it is that globe-trotting nature. Like, you are going to like eastern France, and there's even like a flashback to Colombia, and then there's a large part in Syria and Yemen and the desert and city locations, and like it's a really good mixture, and the story is fine. Like, I think it's in line with the first 2 games. That's good.
I mean, like, Uncharted's always about the character stories, right? And this is really a story that focuses on Sully and Drake's relationship more than anything.
Yeah, it really does. And it's good that like there's 4 characters near the start, well, for the first half of the game, first third of the game maybe, and then it goes into like more specifically to Drake and Sully a lot more, and you do get their relationship in abundance, which is nice. Because
really, despite the fact that we know they're really good friends, they've been, buddies forever, you don't really get that in the first game. Well, because in the first game he like disappears for the whole game and then comes back at the end. The second game he's not. It's mainly Elena and Drake doing stuff in the second game, and so Chloe, this is and Chloe obviously, and so this one is really their chance to make good on the Drake and Sully relationship. Right.
And I actually think the puzzles are the best in the series in 3, and obviously I've not played 4 and Lost Legacy, but so far where I am at, I think the puzzles were fantastic in this game, and there's some really cool things where you think of puzzles and the way they're laid out, and it's the use of 3D space with those puzzles. So in Uncharted, there are plenty of puzzles that are based around stuff like grids and these sorts of things. And you think to yourself,
like flipping tiles on a stone thing or whatever.
Sure. And ultimately those puzzles can be done in other forms of games. They can be done in like a specific 2-dimensional puzzle game.
It could just be like a Professor Layton puzzle that you just come across randomly.
Whereas there's some puzzles in this game that really utilize like shadows and 3D space and like cogs and gears and mechanisms and things that, like, I would argue are far more unique to a third-person like game, a 3-dimensional game, that I think I just pulled off really, really well. There's one in particular around shadows and trying to get a specific 2 people to be in the right pose using different limbs, and I think, do you know the puzzle I mean?
Yeah, I think so. It's one that I'd struggled with. I think for me, the environmental puzzles of 3, I actually thought they were kind of weak overall, because I find that stuff cognitively harder to figure out. Like, and I think that one in particular has like a lot of options to it. So it definitely.
I'll admit, like, Caroline was in the room for a couple of them, and there were a couple of moments where she was like, "Oh, try that," and it's like, "Oh, right, okay, that worked." So it's always useful having multiple people to try and identify. Yes. And I have gotten really stuck in puzzle games when it's just like me, just like, right, what do I do next? So
you have a shorter fuse, I think.
Sure,
most when it
man, my fuse can get shorter times with puzzle games. But I really liked like the there's some really trippy desert stuff like in the final third of the game that I really enjoyed, and you're kind of like, whoa, is this? And it cycles between like day and night and day, and Drake is like hallucinating, and then it's cool, like, and that tells an interesting story, and then I think the conclusion to the game is very similar to the second game, actually, and I don't want to give away the end of the game, but it's cool. It works. I like it a lot. And I just think that, like, as a series, that they're just really fun to pick up and play. Like, I'm really not a third-person shooter person. Like, these are probably the first game maybe that you could define in that I've really gotten into, and I've found the shooting like really good. I've beaten all the games on normal, and there have been really tough points, especially in the first and third game. This game, there are a number of tough points. I know that we were talking about like the area around the boat and the
shipyard can suck my dick. I hate that entire section. Like, it's not just the shipyard, it's like when you get on the boat, the ballroom on the boat. Christ, the ballroom just put me through the ringer. I really dislike that entire combat section. I think it's because the pacing is not the pacing of the storytelling,
it's just a bit long.
They expect you to survive for too long without giving you a checkpoint. Is the problem I find.
I think like Uncharted, and this is why I think 2 is stronger than 3, is like that. It's the pacing of the mixture of cutscenes, puzzles, explorative dialogue sort of thing, where you're kind of moving through a scene and
like climbing and platforming to whatever degree you can call it platforming,
right, and then shooting, exactly. And that ship phase is just a whole lot of shooting and a little bit of climbing, and like hardly any puzzles or story or like anything to break it up.
Right, exactly. It's very concentrated combat for a long time, and it gets incredibly tiresome.
Yeah. But I think if you do get to the final third of the game, I think the final third of the game is really well balanced. There's like horseback chases and jumping on and off cars, and like there's some really cool stuff to do with movement. I just really enjoyed, and I thought it was just like a really great mixture of, like I said, puzzles, story, cutscenes, that sort of thing. Like, it just broke up the gameplay really well, I thought, in the final third. So I'm really hot on this game, and like you've lent me 4, so I want to get to that. Maybe not this year, start next year probably, because it is an incredibly busy year coming up in the next few months. But Uncharted 3, I really, really loved it, and I'm a big fan of the series. So yeah, that's Uncharted 3.
Excellent.
What have you been playing, MZ?
So Astral Chain came out, so I've put a little bit of time into that. Not too much to say about it yet, because that's going to be my focus for when we are flying across the ocean and having a long period of time. We've both invested in some power banks so that we can keep our switches charged. Yeah, because I played it for a couple of hours yesterday, and it ran down the battery to like 30%, and I was like, this is not on. I can't have a 7-hour flight and only 2 hours of Astral Chain. I need more than that. So I have, got that so that I can really push through and play a lot of it. It's cool so far. I like it a lot. I posted a video to Twitter that was like the most anime fucking thing ever. The game has a lot of style to it. It's definitely got a vibe that I'm digging right now, and it's got a lot of non-combat stuff going on. You have this hub area, the police academy kind of place, where you are, doing some side quest things, and you're kind of learning about the place. There's like a training room where you can do some combat with your legion. So the idea behind the combat in this game is you're a police person, a super cop almost, and you have a legion, which is a monster that you've attached to a chain. And
Pokemon, but a little bit more cruel.
Yeah, and apparently, according to Austin Walker, they don't really go and address many of those questions that maybe you'd want a game like that to answer about, the nature of the police, and also the fact that they're chaining up these beasts and using them and things like that. But like, also, I know it's bad to say, but this is a Japanese game, and quite frankly, I had zero expectations that they were going to address this on a deeper level. Not to mention, it's really light in tone, and it's anime, and it's just not gonna try that stuff, which is a bummer. But also, like, you shouldn't not criticize it for it just because, hey, it's a Japanese game. But it's fun so far. Like, the combat's interesting. I think it's really hard to get your head around. One move especially, where you, like, I saw it in the trailer, where basically you wrap the chain around an enemy, is really hard visualizing with your thumbsticks, because your left thumbstick is controlling your character, and then if you hold down a trigger and move the right thumbstick, you can move your legion wherever you want it to on the field. And so because you're trying to like cross it over and like entangle this enemy, moving the thumbsticks and like getting it so you don't crisscross is really hard, and does the kind of like patting your head, rubbing your stomach at the same time thing to me, where it's just hard for me to get my head around actually pulling it off in the midst of combat while something is assaulting you and trying to kill you, etc. So I found a lot of the moves just maybe a little tricky to engage with to begin with, because it's a very different style of combat, and so it takes a bit of time to get accustomed to. But I did do like some of the harder training, and I feel like I have a bit more of a hold on it now, a bit more of a handle. So I'm excited to dig more into that. It's neat, and as I said, like I did spend a lot of time not doing combat, because the other side of this game is the kind of detective police procedural where you're running around questioning witnesses, finding things out, like doing some side quests and side objectives, and almost putting together a crime scene, as it were, and saying like, okay, well, this happened and this happened, so therefore this happens, and you're kind of, figuring things out. It's not quite Phoenix Wright, because it's pretty simple so far, but I imagine it may get a bit trickier on that section of things. But it's cool that Platinum are doing something that has a bit more variety in the gameplay than just pure, hey, I'm going to smash things. So in terms of you, being interested in playing a Platinum game, it may have something a bit more for you to dig into there than just, hey, we're smashing them, bashing people about,
right? Yeah,
which is cool. So yeah, I not many thoughts. I enjoy it so far. I'm going to dig into it as we go on. Couple of other games. One that you played earlier this year on Switch and you were raving about quite a bit was Ape Out. Very cool game that just dropped onto Game Pass as is happening with every passing day, Bali. The number I have this. We both have like a watch list on our Switch, which is, hey, you see a game on the eShop, you're like, I'll buy that at some point, so you put it on your watch list until it goes on sale. Very slowly but surely, that watch list is just getting chipped away at by PC gaming and its propensity to just throw things for free at me. Not that I'm saying Game Pass is free, it's not. I'm paying for the service, but I have it, so I'm not going to just buy it on Switch now because I've gone through it on Game Pass. And this game is essentially, it's like a top-down, I relate it probably most similarly to Hotline Miami. Like, it's a top-down action game, but you're a giant gorilla and you are running through buildings trying to kill enemies and avoid being murdered by people with guns. And it's pretty simple in terms of the fact that you really only have a couple of interactive things you can do. One is to just push enemies into walls and they splat and explode, and the other is to grab enemies, and when you grab them, depending on the firearm they have, they will shoot a shot out. So you can get into situations where you're surrounded by like 3 people, and it may be more advantageous to like grab the guy with the shotgun, point him at his friends, and he will just kill them for you, essentially, instead of maybe just like smashing them all into the walls. To be honest with you, I found that just smashing them into the walls kind of worked for the majority of the game. Maybe 3/4 of the game, I didn't actually find myself needing to.
It's much faster because I think that I always found I was playing in two distinct modes of play. Was either as fast as possible or almost as slow as possible, where whenever I was in that middle range, it was always when I get caught or hurt or killed, so if you're going as fast as possible, I completely agree, just lobbing them into the walls is the fastest way to just get through the level,
right? And there's a real like pace, and the way the music builds into that is fantastic, because it's this, would you call it jazzy? It's like it's a very upbeat soundtrack.
It's a very alternative form of jazz, I would say. Like, it's a very it's not got a fixed rhythm. It's very kind of, not offbeat. I don't know enough musical terms to say what I'm trying to say, but it's not standard. It's very unusual.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that like makes it more of a malleable soundtrack is the fact that when you kill enemies, like cymbal crashes will happen on the drums, and so depending on how quickly you do that, there is a rhythmical quality to the gameplay to some degree.
But the game is like silent until you make that first kill, and then the cymbal will crash, and then the drums come in, and all of a sudden you're running, and it's like this is just the synergy of what this game is doing is fantastic. Yeah.
It's dripping with style. It really is, and it has that I wouldn't call it cell shaded look. It's kind of a it's like a shadowed look, really. It's
I mean, it's like almost like a radical cell shade. It's like beyond. If you kept turning up the scale on a game like Wind Waker, it's like that times 10. You know, like
right.
if you kept going in that trajectory.
Because there's really no textures. It's more everything is a silhouette almost. Like you can like the image of your gorilla isn't. You can't see like the fur on it or its eyes or its eyebrows or whatever. It's obviously from a top down view, so you wouldn't see that anyway. But it is just like a single block color, cell shaded but silhouetted, right? And I think that helps to distinguish things. Especially there are levels where the lights will go out, and so you will see the bright kind of torches that emanate from the guns that the enemies are holding. So that gives you a way to indicate where they are and be aware of how many people are around you. It plays with that stuff well, and I think it goes to a number of locations, so you always feel like it's shaking things up and making things a bit different. I definitely do think that the latter half of the game, where it gets a bit trickier, when they start introducing things like flamethrower enemies some like harder like automatic machine gun people, that's where you have to be a bit more strategic. There's one shipyard level in particular. Talk about shipyard levels on this episode and people dying on them. That was definitely a point in the game where I found it really tricky to just barrel on through, because I would just have so many people all sides of me. The rocket launcher guys as well come in at that point, and that's like a one-hit kill that really makes it hard to make.
I love the ship levels because they're like these containers that you can use the doors to just kind of spring out of and spring in, and the doors themselves. Yeah, the doors themselves can kill the enemies, so you can like sneak up through a container that's open at the other end, and you see someone just guarding the end of the container. You bang open the door, kill them, and then just keep running. It's quite, and I love that there's so many different ways to play the game.
I never tried that because there was a moment in one of the levels where I went into a container. This was well before the shipyard part, and I got to the other side, and it didn't look like I could go through it, so I didn't try, and I kind of
give it a bash.
I guess I could have done, but I from that point onwards, for whatever reason, my brain assumed that if I go inside one of the shipyard containers, I'm just going to get stuck, so there's no point in me going in there.
I'd say that shipyard level is probably actually a lot harder without using the containers, just because they're good for like cover. So
there you go. That's probably why I died so much on that level. So go me, I guess, with making it through unaided. But yeah, I think there's definitely levels where you can abuse the layout to some degree. It is randomly generated up to a point, right? Like the general layout of where the rooms are going to be in relation to one another stays the same. So there's a couple of places where you have to go northwards or southwards down a long corridor, and that north and south will always be there no matter what, but the layout of the rooms in specific will have changed, you know? So like every time you go through the layout, the enemies, it's all going to be slightly different, but the general placing of where things are is going to remain the same. So you do have an indication of like which direction you should be going in, and it does one of my favorite things that you love as well, which is if you die, you see it zooms out on the map and you see this just really long snaking line of where every spot on the map you've been and where you ended up and where you died. Nintendo Land does that.
So you can see how close you were to the end and be like,
yes, oh god, there were so many moments where you're just like, fuck, like you're just so close, like you can see the green door and you're like, I'm just there, and I just died at the last second.
I think overall the difficulty is more or less perfect, to be honest. I wouldn't have liked it much easier, and at the same time, if it had been much harder, I think it would have been an incredibly frustrating game. So
definitely, yes.
And it's just the right kind of, took me, I don't know, like 2-3 hours to beat. Like it's a really good short experience, but it just works.
Definitely, I appreciate it for what it is. I do think that you can cheese it, right? Like I think that because of the way that you know sometimes how the level layout is going to be, you'll sometimes get lucky and you'll just like skate along the side of a level and you'll be able to just kind of breeze through without even interacting with any of the enemies. And I found that to be a little bit disappointing, but you know, I think one of the problems is...
I didn't find that was too frequent though, like it was very occasional. on the larger, wider levels, perhaps.
Right. Like, there's definitely levels where it feels like you kind of have to do that. I think when you're coming down the really tall building, and each floor you're like going down the stairs, you get to the main lobby, and it's just a huge, wide open area. And I really could only survive if I went like by the shops, like on the southern portion, like staying by a wall. Because you have to be tactical about having walls nearby you, because if you're smashing people if you push someone away from you, they won't die, they'll just be pushed away into open space, and you have to have a wall for them to impact with, or someone else for them to impact with, for them to die. So in order to achieve that and to take people out, you do have to have, you know, a solid surface nearby you, as a means of doing so. But yeah, it's worth a look. You know, I definitely breezed through it. It was not like, I probably took about an hour and a half overall, maybe a couple of hours at a push. So it's a game that you can just bash through pretty nicely. And it hits a single note very well. You know, I think you'd mentioned that before. It's like, it's doing this thing, it's doing it really well. I like it a lot. I think it has great style, a lot of fun. Like, I will say, I couldn't put it down. Like, it really is one of those games that hooked me in, that I was just like, I want to keep going with this. I don't want to kind of take a break from it almost. You feel like you get into a flow state almost with it. So yeah, I'd recommend checking it out. If you've got Game Pass, it's there, so play it. And it's on Switch. I think it actually might be on sale at the moment. There's some sales going on right now, so there's often lots of sales going on Switch, but I think I did see it going down in price there. Speaking of which, I need to remind myself to pick up the Mario and Rabbids DLC, the Donkey Kong DLC, which has never gone on sale, but is currently on sale, so that's a thing I'm going to grab as well. Cool. The other Switch game that I played that wasn't on Switch is another Game Pass. Like, this is what I'm talking about. It's chipping away, because this time on the show, there's two games that I had intended to buy on Switch, and I've now removed from my watch list because I've played them already on Game Pass. Yoku's Island Express game. I think came out. Did it come out last year?
I think so. I mean, wasn't it the start of this year?
No, it's definitely not a this year game. Because I remember people talking about it around Game of the Year time. I think it did come out last year, but it is essentially a Metroidvania pinball game, right? Where you are playing...
It was last year, yes, May.
Yeah, so you're playing as this little ant, and he's on an island, and he's a postmaster. He's a postman, and he is delivering things to the various creatures of the island. And he is attached to a kind of marbly thing that is basically a pinball. And the exploration in the game facilitates that you run around this world, drop into little areas that are kind of pinball machines, and bounce yourself around, unlock a place to go, and move on to the next area. So it is open. It is very much a kind of figure it out game to some degree. I found some of the direction here a little bit challenging, a little bit confusing. It does lead you off quite well, and you know where you have to go, but then there's multiple points at which I'm like, I kind of don't really know where I'm going or what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think one of the problems is because, not to say it's linear, but like some of the paths you go down are specific, right? So they'll go to a specific area for a specific reason, and then you won't really need to come back there because it's kind of a dead end. So there will often be times where you're trying to get around the map and trying to find where you need to go next, and you don't really know what avenue to pursue, because unless you kind of go into that section and you remember, oh right, I came here before, I left the other way, and there's no way to go beyond this part. It can be a bit challenging. I'll say the map is quite good, so the map does lead you on, and it's kind of what you want a map to be, because when you have a full view of the area, it's literally just a zoomed out version of the entire area, so you can see the intricacies of what parts have the little pinball areas and what parts are like just long stretches, etc.
And
it's
what
not
can
like
you actually control? Only the flippers, or
well, no, you are controlling the character. You are moving left and right.
Okay.
The thing that's really weird and bugs me about it is you can't jump. Like, and I get it. I get why, because that's not what the game is. The game is about moving through these specific passages and using bumpers to move yourself. And there are bumpers all over the world. Like, even in the sections that aren't like little pinball-y areas, there are just bumpers to move you places.
And just bumpers or also flippers?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Flippers, bumpers, whatever you call them. There's little knobs and bobs all over the place.
It's pinball.
It's pinball. It's a pinball world, and you're like being bopped around all over the place. I think one of the things that makes it a little trickier is you do have a limited degree of control when you're being flung through the air, but most of the time you kind of just have to go where it pushes you. So
go with the flow.
Yeah, go with the flow. So like, there are parts where I'm like, I need to just, if I could get enough momentum to just get over that part, I could get over there. But the game is very specifically designed, and I kind of noticed early on that, like, no, I can't really cheese it, you know? There's not an easy way to smooth my way past an area that I'm not supposed to be at. Each paddle that is bopping you around is designed to push you a certain amount, is supposed to put you with a certain speed, and it means that you have practically zero air control when it's happening. So it makes things like that a little tricky when you're maybe trying to find a specific way through. It feels a bit rigid to some degree, which I get it, right? It is based around pinball, so that rigidity makes some degree of sense. But there were moments where it felt a little bit annoying, a little bit frustrating to kind of find my way through. But yeah, I don't know. It's neat. It's kind of, once you know where you're going and what you have to do, it does become almost rote. There are some sections that, like, boss fights will take a while, because instead of, like, you don't die in this game. There's not really a game over state. You collect fruit, and fruit is used to unlock things. So like a paddle that you can get up to a higher area. If you have 30 fruit, you can spend it and unlock it, and then you open it up. And so when you fall down, like your traditional pinball machine, when you fall down the center, you lose a life. Usually what happens is you fall down and you hit some like spiky plants, and the spiky plants will just hit you a bunch of times, and you'll lose like 3 fruit, so you lose some fruit. But the thing is, fruit is infinite, and you can just get as much of it as you want. So as a currency, it's not that important, and it doesn't feel like you're ever pining for it, or you don't have enough or whatever. It kind of gives it to you in abundance. So there's not really any risk, right? So like when you fight a boss, the way they'll punish you is they'll maybe knock you back to a previous area, and you have to, like, not frustratingly, but you have to, like, okay, I have to get the exact perfect shot to like wind my way up to this area again, just so I can have another crack at the boss almost. So similar, I'm going to make a weird comparison to Wario Land 2, a game which I dislike greatly because of its propensity to waste your time, in the sense that boss fights, if you make one mistake in that game, you can't die in Wario Land 2. So what they do is they just send you back to the beginning of the boss fight. They like knock you up.
It's like, I would rather die than just
exactly. I would rather die
back
than waste my time bundling all the way back down here. Got to go through this here. Okay, now I'm back at the boss. Oh no, I made a mistake. I have to go all the way. You know, yeah. It's one of those things which I get because the design of this game necessitates it, but it's a little bit frustrating. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have
cool
a whole
idea, even if it doesn't carry it out.
It's a cool idea, right? Like, and I think ultimately it's a cool idea that for me doesn't quite work, because it feels a little too rigid. There's not enough freedom in it for me to enjoy the systems. And I think when it comes to exploring spaces like Metroidvanias, not having the ability to jump midair really kind of messes me up, you know, like, and I understand they're going for something different, but it is a little bit weird. It's why I don't like the idea of Bionic Commando, because Bionic Commando is a game that is all about using your grappling hook, and you can't jump. Like, you just have to use a grappling hook to move around the place, and it just sounds like the worst thing possible to me. It just feels like I have zero control over where I want to move and where I want to be. You know, jumping's one of the most important things in games for me, so like not having that is a bummer. There are power-ups you get later on, like there's one which is almost a kind of grappling hook that lets you swing around flowers, and then you can use that momentum to kind of swing yourself off to higher places and stuff like that. So I think later on in the game the movement does get a bit better, but yeah, I don't know. It's fine. I think it's fine. Like, ultimately, I enjoyed it. I thought it was okay, but it's not left a lasting impression on me. It's an okay experience. I wouldn't say to people run out and play it like it's the next coming of Christ, but it was a fun little diversion. I enjoyed it. It's very short, like 5-6 hours. So yeah, Yoku's Island Express. It's good. It's fine.
Do you think that for the idea, they could have done the idea better? Or is the idea just a little bit fundamentally flawed in like what it's trying to do, you know?
Yeah. I wouldn't say the idea is flawed. I do think it's still a good idea. I would have personally, if I was making a game like this, made a game that was a little less... it just had a little bit more freedom in the control department, right? Like, When you are being pinged around the little pinball arenas, you can move up and down, but stuff like the gradients, right? Like moving up a hill, because you are it's like a little ant pushing a dung ball, essentially, right?
Yeah.
You are like pushing a dung ball, and
a dung beetle pushing a dung ball.
A dung beetle pushing a dung ball, right. And in nature, you notice that when that happens, like when they're going up hills, they're really fucking slow because they got to push this giant fucking thing that's like 70 times the weight of their body up this giant plateau. And so that feeling is there. Like when you have to go uphill, it feels really sluggish and not fun, which is accurate, but I don't think makes for a good experience as a game, if you know what I mean.
Right. Okay.
And that's you unlock fast travel. Like there are fast ways to ping yourself around the map eventually. But yeah, I think because I wasn't a fan of the movement, it meant that I really didn't feel any desire to go around and find collectibles or secrets, which if a good Metroidvania grabs me, I will go and run around the map and 100% it. And that's really contention, it's based around whether it feels good to move. And you can look to an example like Bloodstained earlier this year, which I just love. I think is fantastic, and I unlocked majority of the map because I just loved exploring that space and moving about it. So it really is like when it comes to this type of game, if you don't have that, it doesn't connect with me in the same way, unfortunately.
Cool.
Yeah, great. Okay, well that is gonna close us out for this first section. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break with some of your fantastic emails. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the second segment of today's show. It's the email segment, and that means we need more emails. We are running low. We of course did not do emails last time, but we still need more. So please send them to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. You can also post a comment, a question in our Discord server under the emails thread, so make sure to go in the Discord link that's in the description, as well as on our Twitter account @TNL Podcast. So check that out. Come in, join the community. It's all friendly. It's all nice. No one hurts anyone. It's very nice. So get in there. It's a good chat. So our first question this week is from Micaiah, who's from the internet. Hi guys. Fire Emblem Three Houses had me thinking whether playing through a game really quickly, playing hours on end every day, affects your enjoyment and experience with the game, and whether that effect is positive, neutral, or negative. Obviously, you have to really love a game to be able to play it much over a short period of time, but sometimes I feel like I might get a better experience overall if I paced myself, limiting myself to like an hour or two a day. But Three Houses in particular is too enjoyable for me to do that while I have a lot of free time. For example, I was really busy during Breath of the Wild's release, so played it very slowly, and reckon exploring one new bit of Hyrule every day for almost half a year added to my experience. Do the two of you have any thoughts or even personal tales on this? I imagine the two of you will be giving quite different answers given how much more quickly MBZ beats games. Haha.
Indeed. Interesting question. Yeah, it's. I think it's interesting to ask this as well because when it comes to journalists reviewing games and stuff like that, I think it's one of the things that never really gets mentioned that much is the time crunch and constraints that they're often under in order to finish games before they come out, and whether that can hurt or hinder a game or in fact benefit it, sometimes that is the case. I think Breath of the Wild is just a good example as a baseline because it is a game that took me a month to finish, but there were periods of time during that, like when I first got it, where I was non-stop playing it. And I kind of found it great on either spectrum, you know? Like, it was during a time where I was writing my dissertation, and so I was, like, in the library for how many hours, and then came home and played a few hours before going to sleep. So I wasn't, like, binging it during the week, but the weekends came and I was like, okay, all I'm going to do is sit here and play this game. Literally the first day that I played it, I think it came out on the Friday, the Switch on that day. Then on the Saturday, I literally woke up and sat there for probably 12 hours and didn't, like, I maybe got up to get a sandwich for lunch, but I barely even ate. I didn't do anything. Because I was so fucking absorbed by it. I was just entranced by it. So in that case, I think that it was to its benefit. For me, it depends on what type of game you're playing, right? I talked about Ape Out earlier, and Ape Out is just a fucking high-octane action, like real adrenaline rush, like your eyeballs to the walls, right? And with a game like that, I find it very difficult to sustain long periods of play. Because the intensity of the action is so high that maintaining it for a long period of time is really difficult. Contrast that to Xenoblade, which is a game that is languid in just the most complete sense of the word. It's a series that luxuriates in you just wandering about doing fuck all. And because of that, you can wander around and achieve nothing in 3 hours and feel like it's been 5 minutes because it's just so huge, and there's not that intensity to the gameplay, right? I think that's the fundamental thing, is that there are certain games which have too high of an intensity for me, so I can only play them in short bursts and not play them for extended periods of time. And obviously it depends on how much time you have available to you, etc. But, you know, Xenoblade 2 is a great example where it was over Christmas and we were driving down to London, and I remember the last 3 hours of that car journey melted because I was playing Xenoblade, and it's just like, I didn't even notice. It just happened, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I can answer this question on a number of levels. I think, first of all, something like Breath of the Wild, I played on a fairly gradual basis. I was fairly busy at the time, not crazy busy, and like I'd play about an hour or two a day, and I think it did take me to eventually get like every shrine in that game. It did take me like a few months, I believe, or at least 2 months minimum.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm glad. I think I would have enjoyed that game if I had binged it or had I played it the way I did. I find that with that particular game, it was very enjoyable because I find that because there's almost no narrative with that game, I think the pace with which I played it was fine, like a slower pace. I would actually argue that a game where I was actually very confused why it was getting such good reviews, and then I kind of, by the end of me playing it, I kind of appreciated why reviewers liked it so much, as a game like Red Dead Redemption 2. So the first few hours of that game I played very slowly. Like it took me a while to like get to through the first chapter. I wasn't playing much every day, and I was seeing all these crazy high review scores it was getting and thinking like, this is not matching up in my mind at all. I'm really confused as to why like it's getting such great reviews. And then because I was put myself in a bit of a time crunch, I was really keen to beat that game before end of the year discussions, game of the year discussions, and I wanted to beat that game. I must have played like 80% of that game over the course of like maybe 2 weeks over like the Christmas holidays from last year.
Yeah, and I remember you crunching it out real hard.
I really crunched it, and that game went right up in my estimations, and I think it was because I was getting so much of the story on such a regular basis, because I was playing such a long story in such a short space of time. I was getting it all at once, and I actually think that, hey, put this into perspective, everyone reviewing that game has played it in a similar or even more time constrained way than I did, in maybe like the space of a few days or a week to get their review out. And I think that story, and especially the end of the game, works really well in terms of like it's just a really dense, intense, and interesting story that I can imagine a lot of reviewers came away to sit down, write their review at the end of playing that game and thinking, you know, that was really great. And maybe that's why, to an extent, there's a whole host of reasons why review scores were actually quite high for that game, and I could appreciate that more. And I think I got more out of that game by not spending a ton of time with it in the sense I did with Breath of the Wild and exploring and things. And I maybe should have done that more with a game like Red Dead 2, but I just wasn't enjoying that world in the same way. So I really appreciated just blasting through that story, and I really got more out of it. And then I think I generally put myself under a little bit of time crunch just for the nature of the podcast. And obviously, MZ, you do beat games faster than me, and I do try to always want to talk about like new games. Like it's more interesting if I've played a new game every 2 weeks for a new episode. So I am always conscious when I am playing a very long game, for example, like Fire Emblem Three Houses, and that's why I try to play, I would argue, a shorter game like Uncharted 3 in that time. And a game like Kingdom Hearts 3 earlier this year, I must have beaten 5 or 6 games in the time it took me to beat Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
because I was conscious of the fact that people don't want to hear me talk about Kingdom Hearts every single week, although that's very much what ended up happening, I guess.
To a small degree.
So there are definitely some games where playing them in a short space of time is more enjoyable, and I do get into a gaming like groove, and when you're in that groove and you're really enjoying something and it is a longer game, I'm someone who likes to play as much of that game as possible while I'm in that groove. I'm definitely not in that groove with Fire Emblem yet, but I can tell that like I will get in that groove maybe on holiday, maybe when I'm back, and it's just I'm gonna end up beating the majority of that game in quite a short space of time, because that's often what I have done with longer games like a Fire Emblem.
Yeah, I don't know, it seems to be a thing that you do quite frequently, is you will take a real long time to get into something, and then when you're in it, you're like, ooh, and then you get to it. I think like God of War was similar with that as well. I remember you saying that you took a really long time, and then eventually it was just like, push through.
And I think and again, God of War, which is so narrative driven, and the start is a bit slower, I would argue, and I think that playing the last, I don't know, 40, 50, 60% of that game in a short space of time, which is more or less what I did, I definitely did get more enjoyment out of it in a way, a bit like my experience with Red Dead 2, although obviously God of War is considerably shorter.
Right, yeah, and I think experiences where narrative is at the forefront, you want to keep up with the story, you want to make sure you don't forget what's going on, like you don't want to take a 2-month break and then be like, whatever, and then come back to it. That benefits having a smaller time period to absorb it, but there can be examples of games like that where if it's not very memorable, then you play through it in a short period of time, and because such a little portion of your life was dedicated to it, you just forget about it in years to come. It just becomes one of those games that you forget you even played, or like what it was, or anything like that. Which I remember back in the day being like listening to podcasts and being like, how can this person who reviewed this game not remember they even played it? Like people from the old GameSpot staff, like Brad Shoemaker and Alex Navarro at Giant Bomb now, who just don't remember half the licensed games that they had to review and play. But now I was looking at my backloggery.
Hundreds of games later, we're like, that's hard.
I mean, and like when I was younger as a kid, also similar with books, I was like, I read this book once, I never have to read it again. I have a perfect memory of this book and exactly what happened. That's not the case anymore, I don't remember half of the things I've read anymore. So it's with time and age and like amount of stuff you consume, I was saying my backloggery, it says I've beaten over 400 games now, so that's the thing.
400.
Yeah, well,
I have to look up my number now.
I've got like 350 on beaten, and then like over 60 that are quote unquote complete, which is like 100%ing or whatever. It's
I'm on 190 beaten.
Okay, so about half. So because of that, I think some games that you do finish in a small amount of time and they don't leave a mark on you, you'll just forget about them completely. Like I can imagine that happening with something like Yoku's Island Express for me, where like it's fine, like it didn't really leave a mark on me, and so in a few years' time I'll be like, oh right, I played that game, don't remember anything about it. Like I think that tends to happen nowadays a lot more with me, which is just a case of going through and liking the industry enough to play lots of stuff, and therefore the stuff that doesn't stand out as much kind of gets swept to the side. In terms of the opposite of this, which is games that benefit more from shorter play sessions, for me there's a few examples of this. I think games that are especially repetitive, like roguelikes, are a prime example where I think I would have a better time with a lot of those things if I just dipped in and out of them, right? And I didn't play them as a consistent thing. I think part of the reason we bounce off roguelikes a lot is because when we're playing a game, we're just playing that game and we're focusing on it most of the time. So something like Dead Cells, like I was playing a lot of it and I was like, all right, I'm going through the same thing. again and again and again, and like it was enjoyable. I liked it. I felt myself getting better, but I think I would have enjoyed Dead Cells more if I had got it early in the year and just dipped into it now and again. And I'm finding that currently with Void Bastards, which is a game I'm playing on Game Pass that came out earlier this year. It's like a first-person shooter roguelike that is really cool. Like, it has a great cel-shaded comic book aesthetic. It has such tension in it. Like, it's all about running around ships and collecting things and getting the right components to bring back. And ultimately, the game is the same thing again and again. Like, it ramps up in difficulty. Like, there are little random elements that throw in, but it is really repetitive in its core thing. Its core thing is fantastic and it's doing it so well, but I can't play that game for more than like a couple hours at a time. Like, maybe an hour at a time is good. And then I kind of have to take a few days break from it because I really like it and I enjoy it, but just doing it again and again and again and again just gets really tiresome for me. So it's a game that I've been playing for the last few months since I got Game Pass, and you know, I'm not near the end of it. I've not finished it so far. I think I'm probably like going to set it down for the moment and like take a break from it. But I just like dipping in and out of it, and I may quote unquote finish it eventually at some point, maybe like next year or something. Because I'm not constantly playing it, it's just like I'm dipping in, I'm dipping out, I'm not playing too much of it. And similar with Sushi Striker that I played earlier this year, which is very repetitive. Like, it is just the same type of battle again and again and again, and they do add some twist to it, but fundamentally Sushi Striker really is just the same thing. And that game is not long. It's like maybe 15 hours max. It's like it's pretty short, all things considered, but it took me 3 months to finish because I wasn't in the mood to sit there and just bang it out for 7 hours in a row. You know, it's not that type of game. It's not a Xenoblade where I can sit there and wander around Gower Plain for hours on end, because like the activity itself in Sushi Striker and in Void Bastards, it's short and intense, and so it's very difficult to keep that attention span and that desire to constantly play it for periods of time. So those are certainly games that I think I enjoyed more not having to do something like review it, for example. Like, if I had to review Sushi Striker, I think I might have come out the other side being like, this game's not great. Like, it's super the same thing. And but I really appreciate Sushi Striker. I loved it. I thought it was really good fun, and I think it's fundamentally a great game. But it's one of those things that I just had to dip in and out of, and I couldn't commit myself in the same way. Yeah, so I think it, obviously for me, it fundamentally depends on what type of game it is, and that will kind of dictate the way that I play it and how I kind of get my hands around it. So yeah.
Cool. So our next email is from Capsule J from Georgia. Bally and MBZ, I feel like British themes have become more prevalent in games over the past few years. Forza in the UK, Afternoon Tea in Fire Emblem, Scottish Stormtroopers in Xenoblade, with Pokemon Sword and Shield taking place in a Britain-like region. This begs the question: in the Pokemon equivalent of Edinburgh, what would the gym and gym leader be like? What kind of Pokemon would there be in the tall grass? Thanks as always for the great podcast and for entertaining ridiculous questions like this one. Well,
here we go. Imagination run wild, Bally. I mean, I think it's very obvious to go with the stereotypes, right? Like, there's so many times I've seen on Twitter, like, have you seen the drawing of Canadian Pokemon with, like, the poutine thing that's just, like, walking about and stuff like that? I feel like it's very easy to go for the obvious picks and be like, well, let's have a haggis Pokemon, and it can be, like, a weird creature that people think haggises are real creatures, like a weird sheep thing that runs around the field and stuff like that, which I get it.
And you could have like a really little lamb, and then it evolves into like a big sheep, and then it evolves into like this big haggis. And it's like,
just like a monstrosity.
And then so for everyone from outside the UK, they can be like, oh right, that's where haggis comes from. It starts as a little lamb, and then
haggis is just the evolved form of a sheep, essentially. Exactly. Hey man, we haven't seen the evolved forms of Wooloo. You know, Wooloo could turn into the haggis Pokemon. It is possible. Although I think Wooloo is like the starting area, and the starting area is kind of like lowland, like Midlands kind of area. So it's probably not gonna get to that point. The map in Sword and Shield looks like a backwards kind of UK to some degree.
Yeah, this was mentioned before. Yeah.
Because like the stuff at the top has a wheel and stuff, and I'm like, is that the Millennium Wheel? Is that London at the top? Like, I don't know. It seems like an inverted UK to some eyes potentially.
Inverted in the sense that there's a big old city right at the top, which you would assume is London, where Inverness should be basically.
Exactly.
And we all know Inverness isn't quite the size of London, so
not.
I get that, but at the same time, it is a lot colder up there on the map in
That's
Sword
true.
and Shield, I should say. So yeah, I like what they've done, but I don't know. What are the stereotypes of Edinburgh? What is Edinburgh most famous for?
I feel like
Edinburgh's most famous for culture, to be honest. Edinburgh is the home of Harry Potter, the home of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Those are our two most, the home of Adam Smith and philosophers. Although Adam Smith's actually from Fife, but he studied in Edinburgh, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah. There's a building in Glasgow, the Adam Smith building, in the Glasgow University, which I had to go in multiple times. So yeah,
there you go. So yeah, I'd say something cultural that books. There's not been a book Pokemon yet, and we have moved into the realm of objects. So
sure. Yeah. I mean,
it seems very
possible.
that's.
I feel like that's a bit generic though, right? It doesn't scream Edinburgh to me like a book.
A tartan book.
A tartan book. There we go. now you're talking, friend. I do feel that bagpipes is an obvious go-to, right?
Absolutely.
A bagpipe Pokemon seems like
it could start as a chanter. So the chanter's just it essentially looks a bit like a recorder. It's just a small single but pipe, I guess. And then it could evolve into that's more sort of Irish style pipes where it's literally just the chanter and the bag, and then it could evolve into the full-on Scottish pipes
with all the fucking pipes everywhere.
With the pipes going out the top. They've got a name, I can't remember. Anyway, so that could be the 3 stages.
Yeah, I think that works. I think that's a pretty obvious one. That's probably the most obvious one.
So Route 1 in this game, you just see those little chanter Pokemon.
Yes, there's just little
there's just loads
chanters.
Of them.
Chanters sounds like Haunter to me, so now I'm thinking of it being a ghost type bagpipe Pokemon and just haunting you with its music as it just pops around. That could be a fun idea.
There's a lot of ghost history and things in Scotland as well.
I mean, there's the Edinburgh dungeons and ghost tours that happen around Edinburgh, so there's a way for you to weave that in potentially. What else was he asking for? Gym leader and gyms and stuff like that. I mean, the gym has to be Edinburgh Castle, doesn't it?
Oh that's Edinburgh.
That's
Castle.
Clear. You have a big kind of walk up to the top of it. The cannons. I think the cannons are a big symbol, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So you could have a cannon Pokemon.
The gym leader's Pokemon would be a big old 1 o'clock gun.
Well, I mean, you've got Gigantamaxing now, right? So it's just a cannon that just explodes into this giant cannon.
Giant cannon.
That blasts you off the top. That sounds like a good idea to me. I mean, in terms of people, right? The Queen comes here often for her.
She loves staying. She stays in Balmoral a lot. Up in Aberdeenshire.
But Holyrood, she doesn't really stay at, does she?
She does occasionally, just to, I don't know,
to hang out,
keep it warm. Yeah.
Sure.
Holyrood Palace.
Is there anyone who lives in Holyrood just in permanence at all?
Yeah, people who work there.
Yeah,
so all our taxes go, don't you know?
Oh god, that's true.
Keep Holyrood warm.
Right, the type of person who would run an Edinburgh gym, I feel like they would be maybe a bit more upper crust. They wouldn't necessarily be a working class person, because I feel like
Edinburgh's got quite a posh reputation.
Right,
yes.
The perception of Edinburgh is it's posher than Glasgow, right? So
there's a lot of English people.
Exactly, there's a lot of things. There's less of hey, guess what? I grew up in Scotland, in Edinburgh. I barely have a Scottish accent whatsoever, so tells you all you need to know about the people who live there. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to think. Maybe I don't know.
Edinburgh has a lot of private schools. I feel this could be.
Oh no, we're gonna have a headmaster who's in the castle. That's a grim prospect.
Yeah. Castles, potentially. Private schools, culture, fringe festival, cannons, haggis, bagpipes.
I think these are all good ideas. I think definitely, for me, the bagpipe Pokemon sounds like the best idea in terms of the evolutionary stages of it. I do like that. Yes. I think you could give it sing potentially as a move, but sing doesn't it's not really singing, is it? A bagpipe is an instrument making music.
Uproar and all those moves.
That's a good one.
Gets,
Yeah, that'd be a good one. Ability wise, it could have soundprouf,
or its songs. Its moves could just be Scottish songs, like Scottish tunes.
Right,
like
yeah.
Highland Cathedral is just like
it's just a
it's
move.
hyper beam.
Yeah, Highland Cathedral is its hyper beam. There's
Highland
a quote out of
Cathedral.
context for you. Oh dear. Yeah, and what about like, you know, good chippy? I mean, there's definitely places in Scotland that are more well known for fish and chips and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
definitely something fish and chips related. I was going to actually say rugby is quite a big part of Edinburgh culture.
That's a good one.
Edinburgh and so
a rugby ball.
I
think a rugby ball, just a sentient
ball.
rugby ball.
What about like some Pokemon that like fires rugby balls?
Just like a rugby ball launch. Maybe that's what the cannon does.
Yes,
the cannon shoots rugby balls.
Well, the club name of Edinburgh used to be the Edinburgh Gunners. Now they're just Edinburgh, but they used to be Edinburgh Gunners, and their logo was like the ramparts of Edinburgh Castle with a big ass cannon. So I always imagine that cannon was shooting rugby balls.
Well, there you go. It's worked
Exactly.
out here. They can tap into that influence. I mean, the one that I was joking about before we were recording is Iron Brew. Like, obviously, like branding is a thing. You can't just take Iron Brew, but there's got to be someone who. I mean, let's be honest. They're going to lean into stereotypes. Whatever version of Scotland exists in Pokemon is going to have a ginger person as the gym leader. Let's just be frank about it.
Exactly.
You know, it's just going to happen. We can't do anything about it. They're going to wear a tartan hat and have a kilt on and be ginger and probably wield a bagpipe Pokemon and have a cannon. And that's the gym. I think the gym leader, you face the gym leader, they have the cannon Pokemon, they have the bagpipe Pokemon, and then the held item on the bagpipe Pokemon is an Iron Brew. And it basically just like jacks it up and like goes into Super Saiyan mode and it just starts firing fucking things out of its pipes at you. I think
an Iron Brew, a bagpipe Pokemon that shoots Iron Brew out of the tops of the pipes.
Yes, it just shoots Iron Brew cans at you. You just have to dodge them. That's the mini game to get up to the gym. That's the gym challenge in of itself. I mean, I hope, talking about Pokemon itself, I think I do hope that the gym stuff is a bit more interesting and they lean into more puzzly stuff a bit more. There's
By the way,
potential there.
The parts that poke out the top of bagpipes are not pipes; they are drones.
Drones, because they just make the sound
they just
constantly.
Drone. Yes, exactly. Yeah. You can't have rests in bagpipe music.
So it just has to have that constant background.
It's always got to be a note. No matter what, it's got to be a note.
Yeah, weird. Cool. I mean, drums as well is a thing. Pipes and drums.
Yeah.
So you can throw some drums in there. Traditional drums. Yeah, I don't know. There's Pokemon can come from all shapes and sizes. The thing that if Nick was here, he'd say, "Ha ha, let's do a goat," because that's the meme with me and goats. And, a Highland cow Pokemon is the one. A Highland
cow Pokemon has to be in existence.
If I'm a betting
that
man,
will exist.
yes. 100%. If I'm a betting man, the bet that I make is that the one Pokemon that they make of Scottish origin is a Highland cow Pokemon.
What about like a Galar Miltank is just a Highland cow?
Oh dear Lord, Bally!
Now we're thinking.
Oh my God! Now this is fucking extra dimensional chess.
Because we know that there's going to be Galar species, and I'm excited for those because they are going to be great.
You are so right. They are 100% going to make Galar Miltank a fucking Highland cow.
They're going to be Galar Pikachus with just like wearing a Jimmy cap and
with a fucking knife.
With a ski and do. Yes.
Yeah. Christ. Oh dear.
A Jimmy cap is like, it's like a tartan beret with just ginger hair coming out of it that is like a Scottish stereotype hat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I think that I think we've made some good assertions here. I don't know if there even will be a representation of Scotland in this version of Pokemon. I don't know.
There will be something. There has got to be
something. You
know
what, Bally? Here's the thing. When we talk about the rest of the world and depictions of the United Kingdom, so many people disregard Scotland as a part of the UK. Most people in America, when you say, I'm from the UK, they're like, oh, so England. And you're like, no, that's wrong.
From England.
No. But I wonder if the homogenization will just, band around the idea that it's an England-focused thing, like, and cut off Scotland from it, which would be a
I
bummer.
mean, when have Japanese studios ever culturally appropriated another part of the world badly? I mean, I'm sure there's no chance of this happening.
No,
whatsoever.
yeah, definitely not. 100% zero on that.
They're always so on point and accurate. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yup, definitely. Cool. Well, we'll see. Hey, look, if nothing else, I got to fucking drive around Edinburgh in Forza, so that's cool.
Yeah, that was
also
fantastic.
The best thing was that Edinburgh was in Avengers Infinity War, which we keep going on about. But that's
Edinburgh is also going to be in Fast and I don't know.
Right,
Fast
the
and Furious
9 or whatever.
9? I've never seen a Fast and Furious in my life, but they're shutting down a big chunk of Edinburgh this autumn to film that. So
I was watching along Fast and Furious with the commentary from Giant Bomb for a while.
Really?
I got 4 movies in. I need to pick that back up at some point.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That is hardcore.
Yeah. I know. I was like, well, they talk about it all the goddamn time, and I'm like, I need some frame of reference here.
Kind of funny to talk about it. They're now doing a whole in review.
I know.
Anyway, yeah. So that was emails.
There we go.
Thank you so much for sending in those very fun questions. So please send your emails. We always need more to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That's ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. And as I said, stick questions in our Discord server. We've got a thread in there. Right, but that's all we've got time for. Now we're going to go into the third segment where we're going to cover a bit of the news.
Alright folks, welcome back to the last little part of the show. We're just going to quickly go through some of news that has been coming out of Gamescom/Nintendo and their Indie World presentation, which happened a little while ago now, but just, timing wise doesn't work out for us. Sometimes we get screwed, man, and we just cover this stuff way later, but it's not that important. I think there's some big things here that we can chat about, but ultimately, it's just good news. A lot of good things coming to Switch. Switch continues to just be a platform for literally everything. The other day on Twitter, I saw that they were releasing Bulletstorm on the Switch, and I was like, that's the weirdest that's such a C tier 360 era game to just put on the Switch, but it's there. So that's a hell of a thing. I remember seeing copies of Bulletstorm in stores when it was coming out and being like, this is a weird thing. So yeah, let's talk about things like that coming to Switch, because there's lots of them, and they continue to exist. So yeah, they had their Indie World presentation, which is interesting. They have taken lots of different approaches to their presentation of independent games over the last few years, since 2017 with the Switch, and
they keep renaming it every single time. And
exactly, they haven't really settled. I think they finally are now kind of settling on this as a universal branding, because Indie World, I believe, was the Japanese branding for a long time, right? So every time Japan got an indie thing, it was called Indie World, and in the US and Europe and stuff, they hadn't done that universality to it, because there were separate presentations, different people presenting, etc. So now I think they're just kind of gathering under one umbrella, sticking with Indie World. I think that's what they're going to stay with now. And it seems like they have switched over from the person in front of a green screen format to just pure voiceover format, which I feel a little conflicted about. I think part of the charm of Nintendo presentations and directs is still having those faces to those names. And so we've got Katie Casper and what's his face? Kirk Scott.
Yes.
So those two are now kind of in charge of the indie presentation.
We have seen their faces before.
Yes, they were in the last presentation of this ilk that happened. But it seems like they're maybe just going cost cutting to some degree, I guess, but also it probably makes it easier for them to make these presentations by just having it dubbed. So that's basically the format, and it's similar to Nintendo Direct, where it's, hey, here's a game, check it out, blah blah blah, give a little pitch maybe sometimes, talk about what the game is, and then having some montages as well. There was a lot of stuff in here. Some of the stuff more relevant than others. I think maybe we'll just hit the big stuff to start with. Obviously, the major one, which is the One More Thing, was kind of leaked beforehand. It was not, people have been chatting about it the whole year, for God's sake. And of course, with the burgeoning partnership between Nintendo and Microsoft, it was only an inevitability. Like we got to like the real dream, which was Banjo and Smash, which was far less realistic in my mind than Ori and the Blind Forest coming to Switch, because especially after Cuphead got announced, it was like, oh well, obviously Ori's coming, because that had been the rumor. I think end of last year, people on Reset Era and stuff were saying, I've got a rumor that Microsoft are going to bring Ori. Ori was actually the one which was leading the charge in terms of announcement, in terms of people talking about it. More people thought Ori was coming than people thought Cuphead was coming. And so when Cuphead was announced, people were like, oh well, that basically confirms Ori as well. And finally, they have announced it, which is a very quick turnaround because it's coming out on the 27th of September. Will I triple dip? Most likely, yes, because this is absolutely one of my favorite games of all time. I adore Ori and the Blind Forest. I will say to anyone listening to this who doesn't own an Xbox or a PC, who has never played this game, they are saying this is going to be a well done port. Like, it's going to be 1080-60 on docked, and it's going to be 720-60 undocked, which is music to my fucking ears, because so many times ports on the Switch underwhelm and are not what you want them to be, but this game deserves it. I'm glad it looks good and is going to run well. Quite frankly, if you haven't played this, you have to play this when it comes out on Switch. And I know it's a busy season. I know there's lots of games coming out.
Yeah, I really want to play Ori, but it's coming at a horrendous time.
It is, yeah.
Oh.
But you know how much I love this game, and you know that you will. I know you'll get to it eventually.
Yeah.
But
I've been meaning to play it for a very long time. Well, since you've been so hot on it. And it came out in 2017, 16?
No, 15.
15 now.
Yes.
Jeez, I thought it was way later than that. Okay, yeah, no, I mean, I've been meaning to play this a long time, and it's finally going to come to a system that I own. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll definitely play it this year.
And this is the definitive edition, which is in some senses better, in some senses I wouldn't say worse. Like there's an area that they add which I don't think is quite up to snuff with some of the other stuff in the game. It uses my least favorite mechanic in the game, which is a mechanic where you have to carry a thing and it slows you down and you don't like get the. It's not. I don't think it's bad. It's very short. But like it's my least favorite like little like in a game that I adore, like this is a little blemish on it. So and you don't even have to do it. It's an extra area. It's like an extra part of the map to explore. But yeah, it's this is one of the best games I've ever played. So you should keep your eye out on Ori and the Blind Forest. Coming out same day as Dragon Quest. So that's a hell of a day for ports on Switch. September the 27th. Looking forward to people playing that thing and telling me how right I was about it. We also had 2 shadow drops during the presentation, 2 hot games, Super Hot and Hotline Miami Collection. Both games that are really good, very well-loved indie games. I'm actually kind of shocked that Hotline Miami wasn't already on Switch, but apparently it wasn't, so they've got the collection coming. And Super Hot, a game that... one of the interesting things I was hearing, actually, is... getting a game to run on VR is actually a good test case for running it on Switch, because on VR, obviously, you have to have the frame rate be so high that, you have to reduce a lot of the visual aspects and textures and stuff to be a bit lower. So them doing Super Hot on VR actually was a really good test case for like, actually we can run this really easily on the Switch now and have it be 60 frames a second. So it seems like that game, hopefully is a good version. It's out there now and people are playing it, I guess. So, I played it last year. Think it's fantastic. You've played the VR. Think it's great. People should check it out. And then the big one that isn't out yet that I think both Bally and I are most excited about is Eastward, which is a game I've been following for about a year or so. I saw a trailer for it a while back on Chucklefish's YouTube channel because they are publishing it. I think we've both kind of decided that Chucklefish is our de facto favorite.
They're the new
publisher.
favorite publisher. They are just so fantastic. So they've now published Wargroove, Stardew Valley,
Time Spinner they did as well, which is a
Spinner.
Metroidvania game I played earlier, and maybe last year, I think.
There's also
this year.
Inmost coming, which looks weird and cool, and they all have they all share, and now Eastward, all these games share like a similar-ish pixel art to them that I think just looks incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. So I do think that they have a house style and they go after games that look a specific way, and Eastward is just dripping with that. Like it screams it being a Chucklefish game to me, and that's really cool, because I think that, you know, they are cultivating a real good kind of group of games that people should be keeping their eye on. And for me, it's very much Earthbound vibes mixed with like some weird Last of Us stuff. Like there's a one shot in the trailer of it's like an older guy and like a younger girl, and like he's pushing her on a pallet across a bit of water, and I'm like, that's literally just ripped out of Last of Us.
Right.
And also has a bit of Zelda combat, like it's kind of action combat, but lots of great flashes in that trailer of like boss fights and later game things, and it just looks tremendous. I just think it's definitely up my alley, so I'm excited to play Eastward. Unfortunately, it's 2020, so, you know, we're going to have to wait a little bit for it, but I think it will definitely be worth the wait. Definitely looks really good. And then we had a few other games I thought were worth talking about. Torchlight 2 is a game that is interesting because it's kind of I think the developers used to work at Blizzard and on Diablo, and then they went off and did their own thing and made Torchlight, which is basically Diablo, but not Diablo. It's like a top-down action series. I own Torchlight 1 on PC and like multiple things, so that's something I've been meaning to get to for a while, but I think that's like a pretty major announcement for the Switch. And then we have some other ones which are coming to lots of other platforms as well. Stuff like Creature in the Well and Blasphemous. Creature in the Well looks great. I've been seeing a lot of stuff about that. It's a game, another pinball game that's not pinball. Having talked about Yoku this episode, I think it's interesting that that's also coming out very soon, because it's like a isometric style action game where you're hitting pinballs at things and defeating enemies and bosses, but also you're running around. It's kind of, it reminds you of Fury. Do you know Fury?
I know the name. I can't visualize what it looks like.
Yeah, Fury's like it was a boss rush game that came out. Not a boss rush, but like Shadow of the Colossus, like a boss fight game where you just fight a bunch of bosses, and it's an isometric, top-down action style. So Creature in the Well has a similar vibe to it to some degree. Very stark art style as well. Very, very kind of comic booky in some senses. And that's coming to Game Pass, so I will be checking that out for sure. I reached out for a code as well, so we may get a copy of that on Switch, depending. We shall see. So maybe Bally will be playing that too.
Cool.
And Blasphemous, you watched the trailer for this as well.
I did.
Bally. Yeah, it's like a Souls 2D Souls game. Very, very good pixel art, like kind of disgustingly good pixel art in a way that's a little bit sickening in some senses. Very much not my aesthetic, but I respect it a lot. And I actually played some of the demo for this. They put a demo out on Steam, and it plays really well. Feels great. Just I don't know if I'm down for this type of
darkness.
I don't know, this tone.
It's weird because the trailer actually zooms in, it feels like, on the character you play as, which is a weird thing to do in like a pixel art game, because it kind of
very
distorts
detailed
everything.
So it can kind of work, but yeah. And then we have What the Golf, which is a game, another one I've been following for a long time that I didn't realize was coming to Switch, so that's cool it got announced. It's very much like a weird physicsy game that is like, it starts out and you're just playing golf, and then it just turns into nonsense and just becomes stupid. So that's a thing that I think it feels like a fun comedy game that I'm down for. Trine 4. Quick note, Trine 4 looked fucking rough on Switch. Dear Lord, watching that footage on the Indie World, it did not look good in any way. If I play Trine 4, it will absolutely be on PC. I am not playing that Switch version. It looks really bad. This is what I'm talking about how, you know, Ori and the Blind Forest is, you know, it's going to look great on Switch. It's going to be a great port. Trine 4 does not look like it, which is a bummer, because
you can
Trine
play with like the touchscreen and stuff though.
Yeah,
right?
I hope so. I think like that would be smart, because they did do that on the Wii U, and it was one of the best ways to play Trine. And Trine 2 looked really good on Wii U, so I'm kind of confused as to why. Maybe because this game is targeting PS4 and Xbox One and PC, it's just visually it's much higher, and so it's, when they're reducing it down to Switch, it is just coming out a lot blurrier and rougher around the edges, which is unfortunate. But I'm a big fan of all the Trine games, maybe except for the first one. I really like Trine 3, despite it being really short and being 3D and different. I did like what was there. But Trine 4 really does seem Return of the King style. It's like, here we are, back in business. Looks fantastic. All I've seen of it so far, so I'm excited to play that. And then we had The Tourist, which is the new game from Shinen, which is very interesting because Shinen made the Fast series, Fast Racing Neo, Fast RMX on Switch, and they also made that space shooter game we played on 3DS, which I can't remember the name of.
Yeah, it was the free. We picked up free with that.
It was part of the Humble Bundle.
Bundle,
It's part of the Humble Bundle. Cannot remember its name for the life of me. Here we go, talking about forgetting games we've played. But yes, that thing. Anyway, Shinen making something completely different for them, which is The Tourist, which looks like kind of a like walking about Zelda dungeony, like pixel style 3D game. It's very weird. I don't really know what it is, but it looks pretty cool. Has
it
nice
was Nano Assault EX.
There we go, Nano Assault. That's excellent. But the Tourist has stuff in it, like it has references to their previous stuff. Like you go into an arcade and you sit down and you can play like a 2D arcadeized version of Fast. That's awesome. I like that nod there. So yeah, I'll see what people say about that. It's interesting to say the least. So yeah, those were kind of the things from the indie world that piqued my interest. It was a good presentation. I think a lot of the stuff with this indie, what Nintendo is positioning themselves as now is much more, hey, you know about this game, it's coming to Switch. And I think a lot of the stuff that we didn't know what it was relegated to the montage at the end, which is a little bit of a bummer because those are games that we really don't know anything about. And so some of the ones that they're showing, things like Torchlight, it's like, great, it's coming to Switch, but like that game's old, it's already existed. I think there is a mix here, right? You do have stuff like Eastward, which a lot of people will be seeing for the first time, and stuff that's coming out soon, like Creature in the Well. So they kind of run the gamut, but I do appreciate them doing stuff like this. How do you feel about like the format and how they've honed it in at this point, Bally?
Yeah, it's slick. Not a ton stood out to me in this, like, I don't want to call it direct, this indie world presentation we'll go for. That's what the formal name is, I think. So yeah, Ori stood out, obviously. Eastward, and then Trine 4, like I am keen on, and then The Tourist, just that art style was very like jarring and like, wow, I'm interested in that because of that art style. But other than that, like, there wasn't a ton I was overly interested in after like a first look. I'd always raise something like Celeste was one, obviously, but something like a Bad North, where I was like, I want to play that just from an immediate first look at it. Or Golf Story is the famous example where
absolutely,
the internet, more than just me and you, is just like, we have to play that. So there wasn't anything that was standing out to me in that way other than Eastward, which I was aware of before. I thought I could have sworn it had been announced for Switch beforehand, but
no. Well, I'd shown it to you a while ago,
right? I think I think we were just on Skype and you're like, Bally, you've got to check this out, and I was like, that art style looks incredible. And I think we must have just said, yeah, I'm sure it will come to Switch, or but yeah, so that Eastward looks fantastic. But it wasn't until that final Ori, just that's coming in September, that I was like, oh, okay, here we go, right, great, cool. And that's kind of like not in the spirit of what makes these things exciting. It's the Golf Stories, the Bad Norths that make them exciting, not just here's this great game from another system we're going to put on the system. As exciting as that is, it's not really
right. I mean, it's, seeing the Microsoft Studios logo on a Nintendo presentation is definitely a hell of a thing, but yeah, I get what you mean, for sure.
But it was good. It was good.
And then like there was some stuff that happened at Keighley's Gamescom presentation. I think the most significant one for Nintendo was we got a release date for The Witcher 3 on Switch, which is coming in October. And that trailer looked rough when I was watching it on that footage. But I have seen some handheld stuff of Witcher 3, and it looks surprisingly like good. Digital Foundry did a really good video breaking down what Witcher's kind of running like and what it looks like on Switch. And obviously I think they'll get more hands-on when the game comes out, so they are the best source to go to when it comes to things like ports to Switch and stuff like that, because they will break down all the technical specs. But yeah, I think this looks, if you're gonna just play it handheld, like if you're committed to never plugging your Switch into your dock for Witcher 3, get it on Switch, because it does seem like the handheld experience is probably going to be pretty good.
And it's coming after Switch Lite comes out, so
it
might be a lot of people doing that anyway.
Totally. I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. And, you know, Witcher 3, easily one of the best games of this generation, one of my favorite games ever. It's like, talking about games that are coming to Switch in the next couple of months, 2015 was the year of Ori and Witcher, and it's like, wow, two of my best games ever are coming to this system.
I swear, I could have sworn they were like 2016. It just feels 2015 now just feels so long ago.
Yep, it was 2015. It was indeed. 2015, if we were talking about personal years for me in terms of my favorite games, 2015 is pretty fucking high. I think it's probably higher than 2017 for me personally, in terms of games that I love very, very dearly. So Witcher on Switch, the Switcher, everyone's calling it the Switcher. It's coming out.
The Switcher.
Get on it. Untitled Goose Game got a release date. RIP my Fantasy Critic League. I feel like that game's going to score well. That game looks goofy fun. I'm glad that is coming out.
What would you do if it just got a 95?
I would die. I'd lose. I'd lose so many points, and then you may be able to beat me. But we shall see. So that's kind of the game comment and indie stuff. A lot of stuff that we knew about, a lot of stuff that's kind of getting reconfirmed and release dates and things like that. It's just a lot more to pad out what is already a very strong end of the year for Nintendo. And to some degrees is just splitting people's wallets all over the place, because you know, you're going to have people picking up Witcher, you're going to have people picking up Dragon Quest, you know. Those two games alone are like 600 hours of gameplay if you really want to dig in. So you've got yourself covered for a millennium probably with everything coming out. It's going to be big, and that's good stuff. The other stuff that came out around the time, like a little bit after, Yacht Club had a bit of a presentation where they talked about what the future is for Shovel Knight, what they're doing, and they gave us finally a release date. Not a solid one, but a month. We now have the December is now pegged for the final release of Shovel Knight, which is King of Cards, which we have been waiting for a mighty long time.
Really long time.
Yeah, and they have confirmed it's all still coming to original platforms. They are still the only company still supporting the Wii U.
Get the Wii U out again for that one. Okay.
Bally, you have to. You bought Shovel Knight on Wii U.
I did.
I bought it on 3DS, so I'm a little bit probably easier to get that thing out.
I've got my Wii U out for Waiver 64. It's not the
just leave it. Just leave it till December. It's fine.
Just leave it.
Yeah, so I'll play through King of Cards when that comes out, but they also have like their whole card game that they made, and also like their Smash Brothers style like fighting game that they've added into Shovel Knight now. And they've also added a bunch of... They're releasing 3 new amiibos for the 3 new playable characters with Spectre Knight, Plague Knight, and King Knight. And each of those unlock a bunch of challenges, and they're adding even more challenges. I remember playing through some of the challenges when Plague Knight came out. Did you do any of those? Like, because they
did a couple, but then I just really focused on the campaign.
Yeah, those challenges were great. Like, I thought they were fantastic. So they're doing more of that stuff. And, this is... If you're talking about, like, pure content, if you want to go for a just disgusting amount of content for an independent game, Shovel Knight is hard to beat these days. Like, it is chocked to the brim full of lot of stuff in there. So it's, if you've never played Shovel Knight, I don't know what you're really doing with yourself. It's absolutely one of the best independent games ever made. So go out there and play it. Then they also announced a new project, the first game in the Shovel Knight universe that isn't from the main game itself, Shovel Knight Dig, which is being developed with another company, I think, and it has a completely different art style. It's leaning much more 16-bit, and it is kind of like a mix between Downwell and SteamWorld Dig. I don't know if it is procedurally generated, that's the word, or if it is hand-designed, but... It looks really cool. It's very different. It's not necessarily what I expected them to do, but it's not really... This isn't Yacht Club themselves doing this. Is more of a collaboration project.
And Shovel Knight looks up-resed. Like he's...
Yes, he does. He looks like Super Nintendo Shovel Knight to some degree. It's got a nice art style to it. It looks really interesting. I wonder if this will get a mobile release as well, because it feels like it kind of looks like it could be put on that platform, which to some degree bums me out a little bit. But it seems like the sort of like smaller project that they want to put out there in the meantime while you wait for the inevitable sequel to Shovel Knight, now that they finally fulfilled every Kickstarter award they had. Hey, Bally, talking about years, Shovel Knight came out the year before that. It was 2014. They've been
God.
5 years on Shovel Knight after it came out, and we're still talking about it. Which is, hey, it's a good way to keep the name in the news and stuff like that. So they have certainly made it a brand. Shovel Knight is a brand now that is wider than a lot of independent things. I think he's recognizable.
Is Shovel Knight going to get into Smash?
No, because they put him in as assist trophy. That's a done deal. Shovel Knight may get into Smash in 5 years' time in the next Smash Brothers, but no, not now, not yet.
We'll see.
Yeah, not much more to say. I think that's just good news all around. I'm happy that Yacht Club will finally be free to do something else. Not that I think Shovel Knight and doing it again and again is bad.
Yeah, I mean, we just want to find out what they're going to try next,
right?
Because Shovel Knight is so great. They've been with it for such a long time, and you just want to know what other potential they have. Yeah,
and I don't mind if they do a direct sequel, if they do Shovel Knight 2, but I've seen these levels a lot. I've played through these levels a lot, different as they may be for all the different characters.
The theming is the same throughout.
The theming is the same, yeah. But hey, that music is really good, so I'm not complaining. Great, and then the last little thing that has kind of been leaked is, looks like Overwatch is coming to Switch. Talking about my favorite games, it's like, hello, NBZ,
Overwatch, Witcher 3, Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yeah, would you like all your best games ever just to be on Switch? Okay, here we go. Thank you very much. Goodbye. That's really what this year is in terms of potential announcements anyway for Overwatch, because there was a officially licensed Switch carrying case that is Overwatch themed, has the Overwatch logo on it, licensed by Nintendo and by Blizzard. So it's a real product, it exists in the world, and it makes no sense to put this out unless you are putting Overwatch on Switch. So I feel like it's all but confirmed at this point that it's happening. It's something I've been screaming about for years. They're doing it. They're finally doing it. So, hey, that's good. Bally will finally probably play Overwatch on Switch, I imagine, because you're already paying for Switch Online, and you can play it online, which is the whole purpose of that game.
But it's weird because it's one of those games where you actually do have to buy the game, right? It's not just free and you play online.
No. It is, but I would say Overwatch is worth it. It is just tremendous, and I will definitely double dip on that, so I can spend another 100 hours of my 200, 300, however many I've put into that game, playing it on Switch. It's definitely guaranteed. I don't think there's much more to say on that, because really all there is like, hey, there's this case. It looks like they're doing it, but I think what adds some credence is the fact that Blizzard and Nintendo have a pre-existing relationship now with Diablo on Switch, with Diablo 3 having come out. The thing I wonder, which I doubt will happen, because they tend to not want to split their community in the sense of having exclusive skins and stuff like that. That would be causing outrage amongst their fan base, but man, can you imagine putting Nintendo?
I've seen people mocking up
Samus
as that flying lady who's
Farah,
and I don't know. I wouldn't be that shocked if skins did come. I appreciate it would cause
the Overwatch fan base would go fucking bananas and angry with Blizzard if they did do that.
If it sells a few Switches, you can imagine.
Well, I know. I 100% think it's a smart thing to do. It would be a really clever thing marketing-wise, but I do wonder, because they haven't locked out content from previous versions before, and this inevitably Nintendo's not going to allow a Samus costume to be on the other platforms.
PS4 and Xbox fans just accepted you couldn't play Rocket League in that game with a Mario hat on your car, right? So I think
that's that is true.
That
is true, but I think Psyonix have already had the precedent that they have done that before, so I don't know. I would love it if they did. It'd be amazing. I don't know.
Who knows? But a lot to look forward to. We've not even mentioned Luigi's Mansion 3 and Link's Awakening.
Right, those are the tentpoles.
Huge games coming this year, all on Switch.
Absolutely. So, that's pretty much it. It's lots of good stuff. Lots of fun things happening. And we'll continue to to talk about them. I feel like, we were chatting about this beforehand, but Nintendo Direct rumblings are like the ground is shaking beneath our very feet. It's September. It's like the Direct is coming inevitably.
It's going to come just during our holiday away, and we're not going to be able to directly. We'll see.
Yeah. Great. Well, that's going to close out for the show. Thank you everyone for listening, sticking with us as per the usual. We have lots of things that we're doing. Obviously, we have our Backlog Club that is coming up, which is for Wave Race 64, which we have decided we're going to do after we're back from the US. So that will be episode 153. So that's like, in October
a
or
month
something?
from now. A month from you listening to this.
Yes, pretty much. So yeah, that's going to be the date that we shoot for, pretty much just around the start of October, and get playing it if you haven't already. I've played a little bit more of it. It's tricky. That game's tricky, but I dig it. I think it's
hard,
great.
But it's so good.
So we'll chat about that, and then we've got other things that we're doing. So next time the episode will be a bit all over the place, because I imagine we're going to get like brief snippets of time where we'll sit down with each other and just chat for like 10 minutes or something. I don't know what it's going to be, but Bally has like a microphone recorder that we've used previously for stuff like when we went to the Zelda Symphony, when we went to Gamescom.
I'll keep it in my sporran so that when we're at the wedding,
let's see if we can get Ali T to guest again as guest
get
on
the groom
show.
On our show. Exactly.
Yeah, get him to talk about. We just got him a PS4.
We just got So why don't we talk about that?
Yeah,
Ali T has got a PS4. Why don't you talk about it on our show?
Exactly. Fantastic.
So, shall we reveal which game we got with it?
No, he might listen.
He might listen. I was about to say it, and I was like, but what if he listens?
No, we can't do that. Got to cover ourselves. Cool. So that's gonna be that. So it will be a little bit of a weirder episode, but that's the circumstances. We're gonna be on the other side of the planet, so we're gonna have to do the best that we can and not miss a date for the podcast, which we haven't yet. Not missed it. So continuing on. What else we got to talk about? Patreon. That's the thing. How's that going, Bally?
You can support us on Patreon. We'd like to thank our two $10 tier patrons. They are my fiancée Caroline and Atari Alex. Thank you for your support, and thank you to all our other patrons. It's hugely appreciated. We've been keeping up once a month. This month it's going to be TNL Takes. That will come out next week. We're going to pre-record that before getting on our jet plane, so that'll come out as normal. We've got an interesting topic for that one that we'll reveal later.
Okay. Very good. And then we are in various places on the internet. You can find us on Twitter at TNL Podcast. That is our podcast account on the Twitters at TNL Podcast. You can find me at Lord NBZ. Where can they find you, Bally?
Please find me on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN 91.
Great. You obviously can find the show in lots of places. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we're on TuneIn. Tell Alexa to listen to us.
I tried this the other day at a friend's house, and it worked, and they were all very impressed.
There you go. Like, you're an internet celebrity, Bally. You can just tell a device, and your voice will come springing forth from it. What magic we create in the world. So you can review us there. You can download us. Subscribe to us. We're on all the podcatchers. If you just have Pocket Cast or something like that, which is still garbage, and I still should move on from it. You can download us there. That's the thing. Beyond Pod. That's the thing. I don't know. Lots of podcasting apps. Just look This Nintendo Life up. You'll find us. You'll download us. It'll be great. Then you'll never have to miss an episode. It'll be very, very good. All right. I think that's it. What are you going to play on the flight, Bally? That's what I want to know. What are you gearing into?
Obviously Fire Emblem, but I was going to take this opportunity with my new battery pack to just play a few Switch games I never get around to going back to. So a lot of the side stuff in War Group that I need to go back to. A lot of the B-sides in Celeste that I really want to play.
Hell yes.
There's just so many games that I want to give more time to. So I'm gonna go for that. What about you?
Sounds good. I'm going to be Astral Chain in my way through, probably majority of the time. But Skyrim's there. Skyrim on a plane seems like a
Skyrim
good
on a plane
idea.
sounds great.
So I might do that for a while. We'll see. We'll see how things go. To be honest with you, I'm probably going to spend 90% of my time reading. I'm 400 pages into The Way of Kings, which is a 1,000-page book. So I'm making my way through it. I'm getting there. So
is that physical, or are we talking Kindle?
No, that's Kindle. That's Kindle. Kindle has revolutionized my life, Bally. I tell you what, I read so much on Kindle, it's crazy. It's fantastic. So that'll be happening, but we will see you soon for another episode. Until then, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you in a bit. Bye bye, folks. The musical interludes used on today's episode were the credit song from Ape Out, copyright Devolver Digital 2019, and Yoku, Taidua and the Village from Yoku's Island Express, copyright Villa Gorilla 2018.
What's his name?
I like candy. I like candy. What a stupid fucking song. Like, why?
Aaron Carter.
Oh my, was it actually?
Yes.
I like candy.
Remember Aaron Carter?
That's a fucking one-hit wonder for you. I like candy. Not as good as the ultimate one-hit wonder, which is
Aaron Carter's 31.
Yeah. Is he 31? Christ.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's not much older than me. I feel
genres are pop and hip hop now, apparently.
His genres.
Yeah.
Weird. Is he rapping now? Yo, I like candy.
Does he sing I Want Candy for like his encore?
Yeah, probably. It's like Green Day coming out and doing Jesus of Suburbia, except his is I Like Candy. That's what the fans are wanting. That's what they're crying out for. Crying out for that candy, man.